Hello ratbags, it's Jade. Welcome to a Valheim news video. Today we're going to cover a bunch of interviews and some updates to the roadmap that have gone on over the last few days. I found a couple of interviews that have got some more details, plus I may be appearing with the developers in the future for one of their live streams. I showed you guys in my community roundup last week that the devs are doing this every week from now on. They're going to be live streaming, covering a bunch of stuff, and there is a chance they may be getting special guests like me. Whoop whoop. So there won't be any pictures or base pictures from me today or art. I'm just going to focus on the interviews as well as expanding a little bit on the lore of the game. Some of the questions that have been answered in these interviews do give us a little hint of what to expect in terms of what characters might be appearing in the game in the future. And important stuff you need to know, like nerfs to bows. How expansive is PvP going to be? What's going to happen to the biomes that you haven't yet explored, the ones that are really unfinished like the Ashlands? Could Valheim come to Nintendo Switch? And pretty much the beginnings of Valheim and Iron Gate and how the developers kind of met and what they think about all the success they've had. Valheim is approaching its 6th week as #1 game on Steam. So all that, let's go. Don't forget to like. And just a quick plug for me, if you're thinking of renting your own Valheim server where you can now have Valheim Plus enabled on it, go and check out the Nitrado servers using my link that you'll find in the comment section. In combination with my discount code you'll also find in the comments, you can get 10% off your first server purchase. You can rent 10 slot servers for as little as £2.22 or for a whole month barely $10. There's even mods and add-ons that you can add that will increase the amount of players that you can have, but bear in mind Valheim does have some issues where people are located and in terms of what internet they have. But once you've got your server, go ahead, choose which one is closest to you, choose your method that you're going to be paying for, and then don't forget to enter the promo code here. Just remember to use the link that you'll find in the comment section, otherwise it may not necessarily work. I'm going to be doing a detailed guide very soon showing you guys what kind of mods you can have on your servers and how to fix some issues that a lot of you guys are having. And back to the actual news, plug is finished. Okay, let's talk about interviews. The Washington posted one last week and there is another interview with the End Gadget. And one more interview with Inverse, all shedding some light, so I'm going to paraphrase and get to the meat of it pretty quickly. In fact, it does look like Reddit has actually got a breakdown much quicker and easier, so we'll go through that. The biggest news update from this lot is that the game modes, they've got no PvP launching at the moment, not like Ark or Conan, but it doesn't mean they're necessarily ruling it out in the future. Now this is along the lines of what they've always said, but it does look like they may be open to adding more additions so that you can have more fun if you are doing PvP with your friends. I wouldn't expect maybe necessarily big open world PvP servers that you just jump on with randoms, as Valheim is always hosted by you or a server that you buy. But it does look like they may add additions, making it maybe a bit easier to organise PvP events, battles, etc. Or maybe some way to keep count or score of how many kills you've got. That's me surmising, but pretty much reading between the lines of them saying no PvP mode planned right now, but other stuff added if there is high demand. At the moment, they definitely think that there are some enemies considered to be too unfair. Here's looking at you, goblins. And yes, we all know you tryhards who've got 4,000 hours in Valheim already can handle goblins super easy. But don't you remember them times when you first rolled up to the plains, thought this was a nice place to build, and then you got immediately absolutely wrecked by these goblins? They're also looking at considering a nerf for the bow. At the moment, it is just too OP. It's too easy just to pretty much take out most enemies from range. They're going to be making combat a bit more challenging though. So while there's some enemies that definitely need adjusting, they're making some enemies going to be hitting harder, but also more tactical approaches to certain situations and more strategy based combat. They reckon they're going to add more mysteries to the game. Now I'm going to explain some of this stuff with the lore as it ties into the slightly updated future roadmap plans. But they've said they want to keep secrets and allow players to make their own interpretations. A few weeks ago I told you guys that boats disappearing seemed to be down to seagulls actually picking them up. It sounds stupid, but that's what a lot of people were reporting. Well, the devs don't necessarily think so. They're not fully aware completely of why the boats are disappearing, and they're still trying to work out the actual cause of it. Now, as I started the show off, trees crushing you is intentional. You saw this happen to me the other night. My Iron Viking challenge, and yeah, I got killed by a tree. The devs just like the way this rolls. It adds a bit more unpredictability from just doing something pretty boring and manual like chopping a tree. They've got no plans to merge with a larger studio. They like the idea of just being on their own. They don't want to be a small cog in someone else's machine. And as I told you guys last week, they are adding a new programmer, a new Q&A specialist, and I do believe another artist to the team. They also mentioned about crunch a little bit and said that they have tried to avoid it as best as possible. They have worked some weekends and a bit of overtime, but they do generally have a no crunch policy. So that is pretty much all big news to me. The last thing I will say is they realise it's important to keep players playing and give them more to explore, more to build, more to do basically, said Tornquist. We're working on adding more content as fast as possible, but that's also the thing. No matter how much content you add in, you'll always have people that are already done with it, basically on the same day. That's something I've learned the hard way. So yeah, it is a balance in that, getting more content for people that have consumed and gone through it so quickly, as well as obviously working on the really vital, important things in making sure the game is running okay and it's got satisfactory loops for everyone. But yeah, a decent interview. I will maybe link it in the comments, but generally when I do this, sometimes it tanks the videos if I link too many things to too many articles. So Valheim hit 5.7 million copies of Valheim sold. They're spending like a 5th week at #1. Loop Hero is pretty much the only one that's maybe come close to dislodging them. So it does look like they're going to carry on being #1 for a good while yet. That's the focus of Engadget's little interview here, talking about how developers found it hard at first, as it was all pretty hectic. Now Tornquist and Richard Svensson are the actual founders of the studio. A lot of the game curation does get put down to Richard Svensson, and Tornquist is someone that helped and worked him and established the company. Obviously he does work and do stuff for him as well, I'm sure. But he's the guy that's done quite a lot of the interviews. Hence why there's some confusion about exactly what Richard Svensson says sometimes. It's not him actually saying stuff, it's usually his partner. Now Engadget pretty much goes over similar stuff with the Inverse interview, although this has got a bit more details in it. They began working on Valheim in 2017 as a side project. Tornquist was working on something to do with THQ Nordic, and they both share in an office pretty much. But in early 2018, Richard left and started working fully on Valheim, and then Tornquist joined him a little while later. They finished off this small interview by saying they're happy that people are enjoying the game. Now this one with Inverse does, as I said, give a bit more details. They figured that when Valheim launched, they might hit 10,000 players on day one, and that would be pretty decent. This is coming from the producer at Coffee Stain that is helping produce the game for Valheim as well. Remember, Coffee Stain are the publishers. But in the first 2 hours, they had sold 50,000 units. That was more than what they expected in the whole week one. And I honestly thought that there might have been something wrong with the system as they kept hitting F5 to refresh. And effectively, Richard Svensson imagined a Minecraft as a reimagined bloody co-op Viking sim. Tornquist really liked the building aspects of the game, although it's apparently much better than it was during the early days. But otherwise, they feel like the game was pretty decent feature-wise, hence why they decided to launch it in early access. Now this is a stat that I've often quoted in videos. The game is 75% feature complete, but they've still got 50% content completion to go. So effectively what that means is they've got the core ideas, building, exploring, combat and enemies. They make up the 3 big features for me. And that full feature is kind of a mix of the things we've seen in the update. But who knows, maybe there'll be something along the lines that will really throw us and be something new added to the mix. Under all of them though, the combat, the exploring and the building, they're still only 50% done, so they've got a lot to add to the game over the next 2 years. They effectively wanted to make a single player adventure that you can play in co-op that has inspired by the Breath of the Wild. A lot of physicality in the world comes from that game, with rolling, falling trees and stuff like that. But also Skyrim and Terraria, which I would say gives me them feels the most. They've been great influences too. Now this is something I didn't know, that Valheim's map is actually one of the largest in any game. Apparently only Minecraft is actually bigger in terms of continuously procedurally generated. But other than that, they are one of the biggest at 314 kilometers squared radius. Skyrim only comes in at 20 kilometers. They speak about how they pretty much had to be smart. Obviously the game is procedurally generated and that helps a lot with features and things to do. When they have a new gameplay feature, they can take from the ones they've already got and tweak them in a way that make it rewarding. They reckon that the appeal of Valheim is also down to a little bit of COVID. People are just looking for a cozy game that they can really sink their teeth into for hours and hours while being stuck at home. And it seems like Valheim's got that mix. It's not too stressful like most PvP survival games. They're really proud of the creations they've already seen with mods and stuff like that, like the Lord of the Rings Eye of Baldur that I've shown you guys, as well as someone's built a Starship Enterprise, which I am checking out currently as well. I really want to carry on seeing as much art and stuff as possible. I really feel like it's a well-balanced, stable game, and they're really happy that the bugs and issues are getting sorted and they've got good groundwork. Now, some of this stuff, as I said, I've reported on first, but they are going to be improved on the building aspect with more pieces. They are adding more cooking stuff. Then it's combat and exploration in Update 2. Update 3 is the sailing and the world, including customizable ships. Now, right now, I know the biggest question is whether or not it's coming to console. I've said it before, they want it to, but they haven't got any plans right now. But they would like to see it on as many platforms as possible. Now, this isn't from the Valheim devs themselves, but Panic Button. Panic Button are responsible for a big amount of games that have been ported over in the past. They recently did the Apex Legends port, although that's not really getting very good reviews. But they did do the Doom remake, and they have worked on a bunch of other games too. Now, they were there to talk about mostly their Apex Legends port, but someone did ask them what would their next project be or what would they like to tackle. And the lead director, Hermberg's part, he said Valheim was the easy answer. I'm not sure if this is my any game pick, Hermberg mused, but right now I'm playing way too much Valheim and I would love to port that to Switch. So although it's nothing more than the development team actually saying they'd like to do it, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. It bodes well though that the Panic Button devs do see Valheim as something that could be ported onto something as pretty bad and basic as the Switch. I love the Switch, I do, but every survival game I've played on it has been pretty horrendous. Ark Survival Evolved is just shockingly bad. Green Hell I wasn't very impressed with. In fact, the only one that I actually really have enjoyed has been The Long Dark. So I would definitely view this with a little bit of apprehension. But for sure, seeing it on Switch, Xbox and PlayStation would be amazing. Okay, let's talk about that updated roadmap. Now, it's only slight extras added to it, but it does give us a little glimpse of maybe what to expect. Effectively, they've gone and added a few things. Update 1 isn't just Hearth and Home, it is improvements added afterwards. The Cult of the Wolf remains the same. Update 3, they've added saga-worthy seas, even more ships. New biome, Voyage to the Mistlands. One thing that is really important to understand is that some updates are going to need new worlds to be created. Now, this is something that a lot of people have been confused or worried about, but it's pretty standard in a lot of games like Minecraft and Terraria and others. You aren't always able to stay on that one world, you will have to maybe migrate. And that looks like it's the plan. We know we've got the unfinished Ashlands and the Mistlands on the map, as well as the Deep North. But any hopes of maybe just populating that with the new updated content and staying on your world, it does look like that's not going to be happening. Things might change, obviously, it's a way away before we get that kind of content added anyway. Some updates will most likely need new worlds to be created, I'm afraid. The new biome, for example, but your old world should still be intact. So don't pay too much attention in finding the perfect route to one of these biomes. Don't waste any time setting up an outpost nearby. Maybe just get ready to have lots of resources to build new ships so that you can go to a new world, set up an outpost there that will have the brand new biomes and the content on it. Now, some of this stuff, if Odin wills it at the bottom, I've covered all this in the past, but there are some more details added to this. Also, I've never really covered what some of these words come from or what they might mean, so we're going to cover that as well. But let's start off with the newest one, Gangleri, special celebrity guest. Now, quick search of Google reveals that Gangleri pretty much was a early king in Scandinavia, and that when he was out and about, he would disguise himself as Gangleri. His actual real name was Gylfi. It does seem to me like the character we've been assuming was Odin, the shadowy figure, might not actually be him, and it may indeed actually be Gangleri. Effectively, it says that Gangleri pretty much tries and tricks Odin by gaining access to Odin's hall by disguising himself as an old man. What does that all mean? I don't know. I'm guessing there's going to be some sort of lore or story beats at the end of the game, or throughout the rest of the game we might get an NPC that will give us some extra bits and bobs. But that very much still sounds a bit like Munin, the Raven of Lore, is also doing that similar job. But yeah, it does look like Gangleri is the guy that we're seeing, and it's not actually Odin. If I'm wrong on that, who knows? I guess we'll find out in the future. but just a little expansion of what this actually means. Now when it comes to Munin, I didn't realise that there were 2 sets of crows. I'm not that big on Norse mythology, it has to be said. But of course, Munin is going to be basically feeding us lore. I fully expect that we'll go around finding new lore stones, or Munin will actually be sitting atop certain places that we'll discover to give us a little bit more fleshed out info about maybe biomes, enemies, or just different resources and items. But it does put to bed any hopes that maybe it would be some sort of boss. I thought it'd be pretty cool to have a flying boss, but apparently not. Munin is just going to be the Raven of Lore. Another one that I hadn't really looked into before was the Svarlfar brigands. Don't you just love Wikipedia? Now Svarlfar apparently is Peter Dinklage in Avengers Endgame. Effectively they are dark elves. They're sometimes referred to as dwarves. Considering they've got the brigands, which usually means like bandit or sort of ravagers, it does look like there is going to be a company of either dark elves or little dwarves that we are going to have to fight or face off against. How this will actually work, whether or not they'll just come along to us or maybe they'll be inhabiting one of the new lands, I'm not sure. I'm pretty much going to guess they'll probably be making one of the new biomes their home. In the past I speculated that this might end up being some sort of brand new NPC wave that will attack your base, and that could be true as well. But yeah, it does look like the little dwarf trader that you see, Haldar, he isn't the only one in the game, and we could be coming up against a whole band of them in the future. So that is hopefully give you a bit of an insight into what to expect more, some nerfs, some changes, as well as obviously info from the interview. I think it was pretty interesting. So like I told you guys, hopefully I will be maybe taking part in a dev stream with Robin, otherwise known as Ear Art, on the Twitch. He's now in charge of content creation, as well as I'm guessing still doing a little bit of art for the game at some point. Fingers crossed we'll be able to get some information about future content and maybe some extra insider info. Also, a few last little community stuff you need to know. There is now an official fandom wiki for Valheim. You may have come across it already, but it's now been endorsed by the development team. So that means they'll have proper moderators and editors on it, correcting any mistakes. Whereas sometimes some of these wikis, they do kind of get left empty half times. But obviously Valheim's such a big game, it'll definitely have a lot more correct info on it now. I also said they've hit 160,000 people in their Discord. It makes them one of the top 100 Discords in the world. So if you haven't already joined, you can do. But any hopes of maybe getting your art shown, you're going to have to maybe plug it quite a bit. But yeah, stay tuned next Saturday. Apparently they are having Lisa involved, the community manager. And they did drop a few hints in their stream that they may have some updates or little glimpses of what might be coming in the next big update. I'll be there to cover that and more, and like I said, later on this week I will show off some of your base pictures, your fan art, and anything else that would get hold of some info. So until next time, rat bags, I'll catch you in Valheim.